Welcome to the Slut Next Door podcast, where we dive deep into desire, unravel kinks and fetishes, and explore the deliciously naughty side of self discovery. I'm Beatrix Vale, an erotic audio creator, and your guide to all things kinky and curious. So let's begin. Public humiliation. I wonder if you know that feeling. The hot flush of embarrassment creeping up your neck, the way your heart pounds when there's all eyes on you. A delicious mix of shame and arousal that you just can't ignore. That's the power of public humiliation, a kink that takes embarrassment and turns it into pure, undeniable pleasure. So, in today's episode, I'm going to talk about what public humiliation really is and all the wicked ways it can play out. I will hit on the psychology behind it, why humiliation feels so good, and what's happening in the brain when shame and arousal mix. And then I will end with some real world examples from subtle teasing humiliation to the kind of exposure that makes you tremble. And of course, I cannot do this episode without talking about why I love it. Now, if you're new to my podcast, make sure that you subscribe and follow my podcast. Help support me by liking, commenting. And then, if you're curious about what I do as an erotic audio creator, feel free to hit the link in my bio or episode description where you can find all the places online that I post my content and interact with fans. So let's hop into it. I'm going to answer what exactly is public humiliation in a kinky context and how it differs from just plain everyday kind of embarrassment. Now, humiliation itself is all about tapping into vulnerability, stripping away the ego, and exposing someone in a way that fuels both shame and arousal. And it's not for everyone. Some people, this is where their sexuality really thrives. And for other people, this sounds like a total nightmare. Either or is obviously okay. But when you take this humiliation kind of power dynamic outside the bedroom, like into public spaces with prying eyes and curious ears, well, that's when things get really interesting. So let's talk about the basics. What exactly is public humiliation? So, at its core, it's about creating a scenario where a submissive feels exposed, embarrassed, or degraded in a public or semi public setting. It can range from something very subtle like being whispered a command in a coffee shop where no one's going to hear, but it's just the thrill of, oh my gosh, my dominant partner is telling me kinky things and there's people all around me. And then you can even go even much more extreme, like being made to admit something submissive about themselves in front of strangers. And of course, I probably say this every episode when I talk about these specific kinks. When we talk about public humiliation, consent is everything. And of course, ethical considerations should be considered. Um, like I always like to say that when it comes to power dynamics, the submissive person outlines the fence of a playground, right? This is where I want to play. These are the places I don't want to go. And then the Dom or the top is expected to play within that playground, never pushing them beyond those fence lines that they set up initially, making them feel safe. And also, in the terms of public humiliation, obviously, you don't want to push kink onto unsuspecting bystanders too much. I mean, that's just rude. So, when I speak about all the things today, definitely not talking about exposing someone in a way that violates laws or puts anyone at real risk. However, there are some very popular porn themes, I guess you could say, or audios where people really love a blackmail kink or exposure play. And that's fine. It's fine to tease that, but obviously these things are legal. When you're engaging in online play with someone, just be careful. Um, I've done some exposure kind of role playing, even some blackmail role playing. And these guys, when they come to me, they're very like, I want you to ruin my life. But I know they don't mean that. Like, it's really just kind of like a sharp edge play, right? And just a little bit of danger. And I always say, like, I don't want to bring you any real life harm. However, when we role play over the phone or through sexting, I'm going to make it feel like this is real. But please know that this will never be real because I don't want to ruin someone's life. I just want to have fun with you and be kinky and get you off. Now, let's break down some of the different levels of public humiliation, just if you're curious, because I know a lot of people listen to my podcast and they're just like, this isn't my thing, but I want to hear you talk about it. So, here's some kind of light and playful public humiliation kind of ideas. It could be something as simple as making someone not wear underwear or panties under their clothes when they're out in public. No one's going to know about that except you and your dom or your partner. Very simple way. And of course, a good dom is going to really hit on that like, oh my gosh, what if she knew you're not wearing underwear right now? What if I made you come in your pants and there's no underwear to catch it? Just kind of teasing like that. Um, it could be something like wearing a butt plug while running errands. That's super naughty and super secretive. No one's being involved except the two people, the top and the bottom. It could also be as small as, let's say, me and you are in Starbucks and mm, you order the coffee. And while you're ordering, I whisper in your name, I wonder if she knows how much of a slut you are. That's not involving the person. It's just kind of teasing um, safely. It's all subtle, but the two people involved know what's going on and it's a thrill. So then you can take things a little further. And one of my all time favorite scenarios to tease men with that I know like a little public humiliation is, for example, let's say that we both go shopping into Victoria's Secret and I bring one of the workers over that's walking around being like, can I help you? And when she asks that, being like, oh, yes, you can help us. My boyfriend here would love to find panties that would really help tuck his manhood in well, but still be kind of sexy. And what size do you think he is? So that is super humiliating, right? Where even though, let's say he's a sissy and does wear panties, or even better, if he's not a sissy and just kind of put into that situation and the blushing that would happen and the nervous energy, it's just so delicious. Another example might be Starbucks, having a submissive male or woman order their their coffee. And when they ask, okay, what's your name? Having them say loser or good girl or good boy, whatever. Um, it's it's teasing, because you're thinking, oh my gosh, what are the workers going to think? Oh my gosh, they're all going to go see who picks up the coffee when I call out, here's your vanilla latte, loser. um, so yeah, and so let's talk about those are just a few examples, by the way, and we'll get into some more examples later. But I want to talk on what makes this kink so irresistible to some people because you may be listening and being like, this is just pure torture. It sounds like a nightmare. But if you're like me, I like to understand why people are into these things, what makes us tick. And so, people that want to be publicly humiliated, it's a psychological tension. And, the submissive person is kind of caught between two forces in a way. They're caught between this deep, raw embarrassment and undeniable, overwhelming arousal. And that just becomes like this heady mixture of shame, desire, surrender. And when they give in to that feeling, that's when the real magic happens. But why does it turn them on so much? And let's talk about what's happening in the brain when they feel that rush of humiliation. The power of shame and arousal is where a lot of this all lies because that feeling of shame actually amplifies their arousal, turning them on more because it's typing into this deep psychological need to submit, the rush of exposure, that overwhelming feeling of being completely owned in that moment. And the reason why people get flustered when they're turned on, why their cheeks burn, why they stammer and blush, it's all connected because shame, humiliation, sexual desire, they all trigger a similar response in the brain. And for some people, that overlap becomes a source of intense pleasure. So let's talk about what's going on in that submissive mind. Chemically, when someone experiences public humiliation, there's some adrenaline going on. And we all know what that feels like. When you feel embarrassed, um, shameful, especially in front of people, your body releases stress hormones. And that creates the racing heartbeat, the hyper awareness, the flush in the cheek, but then you have some dopamine going on in there. If the humiliation is consensual and anticipated, that dopamine, the feel good transmitter that's linked to pleasure and reward and addiction. And that's why it feels so good. The buildup of tension, the risk, the shame, the anticipation. And then you've got those feel good hormones. It's just, it's a blend of intoxicating pleasure. And I think where a really interesting piece of this plays in is like it's the body betraying the submissive. Like they can't help but get hard or get wet when they're humiliated, even though in their mind they're like, oh my gosh, this is pure torture, but why am I so turned on? And that conflict, the helpless kind of surrender moment. I think that that's where the true magic lies in this kink. And then we can throw into there the risk play, because even if no one around you knows what's happening, like let's say I made you wear a chastity cage for the first time and we go into Starbucks. I don't know why I keep using Starbucks, but we all know what a Starbucks is. Anyway, we're in there and I'm teasing you like, oh my gosh, what if she knew you were in a cock cage? Or what would that man think if he knew I have you wrapped around my finger so tightly that you're wearing a cock cage? Um, even though none of these people can hear what's being said, they know what's going on, it's the possibility, the risk that someone might hear, someone might notice, or they might suspect something. And then, that rush, the risk. And when you're being submissive, it makes you just hyper aware of yourself and it brings you a weakened kind of feeling, I think, that a lot of people crave. Some people do the thrill of the risk even outside of kink. Like if you like to speed down the highway or go on a roller coaster or, just those risky things that we do because it's that adrenaline and it's, oh my gosh, am I going to get caught? That some people I think really respond to. For me, example, I don't love these feelings, so it's not for me, but I love doling it out to people for sure and being a provider of that feeling. Now, there is also, deeper psychological needs behind humiliation kink generally. And so for many, public humiliation fulfills some like deep rooted desires, like craving control. Some submissives find extreme comfort being stripped of their ego, surrendering control, like giving it all over and letting someone else dictate what they do, what they think, in those moments. So it's that craving of being controlled. It's some people really have that psychological need to submit. Being humiliated makes them feel smaller, weaker, more dependent on their dominant partner. They crave the humiliation, being degraded to just remind them of their place. And this one, is also very interesting to think about. Humiliation for a lot of people can be just totally freeing. It allows someone to have this special moment in time where they let go of all inhibitions. They shed their pride, let go of that ego, and embrace just very raw and primal feelings without fear of judgment, not having to think or to be the person who's in charge in that moment. When I was doing phone sex and interacting with a lot of submissive men, I started observing that a lot of these men hold very high power, if you will, jobs like managers, bosses, even. And I think for a lot of men, they turn to submissive kind of sexual experiences when they can because it's the only time in their day when they aren't in charge, where they don't have to worry about, a team of people bothering them for or looking to them for approval of things, so it's this very special moment in time where they can just simply let go and it becomes very relaxing in a way, which sounds crazy because if you think about what these guys are going through humiliation wise and then being degraded, that doesn't sound very relaxing to most people, but it becomes that way for them. And to me, it's beautiful. This is why I love sex and kink because it creates these moments, these very special moments in a person's day or even in a person's life. So now that we've explored the psychology behind this kink, let's get even nastier, if you will, because I know that you really want some real life examples, don't you? I'm looking at you, you little public humiliation slut. um, so I'm just going to go through a couple little examples that I planned out to bring to the table here. So, first, we're going to look into the more subtle acts, the hidden humiliation. And because not all public humiliation has to be obvious. Sometimes, even the most delicious kind is just between you and I, and that's enough. So, I kind of mentioned this earlier, the little secret that you're not wearing underwear, or you're in a chastity cage, or before we left to go out in public, I wrote on your chest, right there on your shirt collar, that something like, I want to be pegged. mm, Mommy's butt slut, anything. Insert any kind of humiliating, teasing thing, something that's written on your body. Or maybe I even make you carry a butt plug. Just put it in your pocket, not even wear it. So those require some teasing from me or a dominant partner because, yeah, I mean, doing that by yourself is great and all, but if I were there reminding you or pointing to someone that walked by, you know, I, we should probably show her, tell her that you're wearing a chastity cage. Or, maybe we should just pull down your shirt a little bit and show that girl how much of a naughty slut you are. Just little things like that. Or another subtle example is little whispered exchanges we may have that no one else is going to hear. Mm, we'll use Starbucks as an example. I take you to Starbucks and I pay for your coffee and I make you whisper to me right there in public. No one else can hear, we don't think. But I tell you, why don't you thank me the correct way? So maybe you looked at me and you said, thanks. Thanks for the coffee. And I say, tell me the correct way in my ear. And you lean in and you whisper, thank you, mommy. Or thank you, mistress, whatever. That's exposing your submissive nature in public in a very safe and subtle way, but that's still super exciting. Now let's up the level a little bit. We'll call this medium risk of teasing exposure. So imagine if we go into a grocery store and I put a few things in your grocery cart. Those things involve a big, long English cucumber. And then I grab some KY lube jelly from you know, the sexual wellness aisle. What else would be in there? Perhaps some grocery stores might have pantyhose, just different things like that. And I say, I'm going to go to the car. You go ahead and check out, okay? Don't add anything more to your cart. Don't take anything out, but pay for these things and watch the cashier's face as they bag your items that look like you're about to go home and have some naughty fun. Again, yes, the cashier is probably going to be like, "Oh, this is interesting." But they're also it's not dangerous, right? Because it's not obvious. Hell, the cashier might even not blink an eye, depends on how paying attention they are. But then there's other things like maybe we're out to dinner and instead of whispering, I tell you to say out loud something like, I'm an obedient little slut for you. When I know the waiter is maybe 3 feet away from walking up to us. Another thing, we're at the mall and I'm browsing through some dresses and I find this really cute dress. And we start walking to the dressing room. You're thinking, I'm going to go try on the dress. But I hand it to you and I say, go on, Go in the fitting room, go try on the dress and send me a picture as proof. And yeah, that's fun too, isn't it? I might even make you say, I might even say, I'm going to stand right here outside your dressing room and I want to see you in the dress. So just open that door a little bit and show me. Um, yeah, just love those moments of teasing, excitement. And, if you're a good boy or girl, you're going to do exactly as I ask. Let's go even further, shall we? I would I would say these are for people that really, really crave a deeper humiliation. So let me paint this picture. Let's say that we are in a serious relationship and no one knows that in the bedroom, I own you. You are my submissive slut all the time. However, I start teasing when we're socializing with our friends. I make you do little admissions of your submission. So just kind of throwing into conversation, I do whatever she tells me to, or throwing into conversation, yeah, well, I do it because she owns me with a smile on your face. And people are going to probably raise their eyebrow, but that's what makes it so exciting because then they're thinking, oh, are they talking about sex or what? You know? Um, or let's say that we're out socializing again at a party or a club, and I set up the rules that you have to ask me for permission for anything you do. So, all throughout the night, out loud, in front of people, if you want to sit down, you have to say, may I sit down? Or you have to ask me to go to the restroom. You have to ask me, can you order a drink? You have to ask me every single thing that you do. And again, it's not super obvious, but if someone is paying attention, they're going to start making observations. Oh my gosh, this man is asking her for permission for everything he does. Wow. Then we could even do some forced interaction, like sending you into a sex club, or not a sex club, sorry, a sex store, where they sell adult toys, and having you ask the worker, can you point me in the direction of obedience training tools? My girlfriend says I need to be properly punished tonight. Or even this could be in a shopping mall or club, going up to a woman, complimenting on her shoes. And then after she says, oh, thank you. And then I have you tell her, they're so beautiful. I wish I could lick them, just to expose to a stranger how much of a submissive whore you are. And, you know, here's the best part for me, why I love public humiliation, or humiliation in general, is watching someone squirm. It's like I can equate it to being at this control panel, pressing all these buttons that make someone squirm and blush, and, just being able to watch someone have that internal battle like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing, but I'm going to do it. So I'm a good boy or girl. And I always like to push the narrative of, femdom, that it isn't just about making someone feel small. It's not about the yelling and the being like, you're a loser. Fuck you. It's not about that. It's about control and getting inside someone's head, molding someone to my desires, Because, if I'm to humiliate someone in public, if I'm going to take the time to be clever, because that's another thing, I get to be clever and teasing, it's, I'm doing it to potentially own you in a way that's just unshakable. Because if you obey and do as I ask, that's going to be a memorable moment. You will know in that day and time that, oh my gosh, this woman owns me. And I gladly will take shame and humiliation and twist it into pleasure because I know that's what that person craves. And to me, the best part about humiliation, especially these kind of teasing moments, is the way it lingers. It becomes a memory that's unforgettable. I feel like you're always going to chase that moment, you know? You think about it, you replay it in your head. You get like physically aroused just remembering how I made you feel. That right there is true power and what turns me on. And feeling empowered is what turns me on. So that's what makes public humiliation so intoxicating for me. It's a little bit, I get to feel a little bit evil in a way. And I'm not, it's all consensual. So, it's not like I'm being a shit person. I'm just delivering pleasure to someone, and it's so much fun. Now, I would love to hear from you if you have any public humiliation fantasies, or if any of these examples that I gave really resonated with you. I love to know all your thoughts. So feel free to comment on this podcast episode with that, or absolutely feel free to join. I have a Discord server where I post, all my work in there. But I post my podcast updates, and people are happy to interact with the episodes. So click the link in my bio. That Discord server invite should be in there. But I hope that you enjoyed this thrilling experience of public humiliation. I hope that it made you blush a little or even made you feel special between your legs. um, but I absolutely do hope I brought this kink justice and explaining what it really is, the psychology behind it, ending with some real world examples of how this kink can be explored in safe, consensual ways. I appreciate you listening, and until next time, bye. And that's a wrap for this episode of The Slut Next Door, where we dive deep into the raw, unapologetic truths of human desire. If you loved what you heard today, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a juicy moment. Want to connect with me outside the podcast? Click the link in my bio, where you can find lots of juicy content and options. Until next time, I'm Beatrix Vale, your Slut Next Door, and I'll see you in the next episode.